Hi, my name is Rayna Glumac. I am the Managing Principal Consultant and founder of Rye Consulting. We support companies, we like to say pre-K to gray, so early childhood through adult learner, and we support companies in 5 key areas. So the first one being procurement. RFPs we write and source on behalf of companies, helping them get into school districts, universities, and early childhood centers. We also do curriculum, so standards alignment, lesson plan writing, instructional design. Market strategy, we support case studies, market analysis, competitor analysis, best practices for pilot implementations, as well as advisory. So a lot of the work that we do as an AWS collaborator, doing work sprints, giving talks, and supporting the early startup community as they invest in education. And lastly, the work that we do is professional development. So at Rye, everybody, including myself, is a classroom teacher with a master's degree. And what we really do is support education companies and bring teacher voice to their products. I'm sure you built an extremely intuitive platform. No one needs training. They can turn it on and figure it out themselves. Or you've got a great video that really helps explain how to use your product. And I'm here to talk about how professional development, professional learning can really help expedite your access into school districts and universities, as well as create fidelity of implementation of your product. I think professional development is sometimes looked over, but it's actually a really great loophole for early stage companies to think about. And when we talk about professional development, there's lots of different implementations. I know in the days of COVID right now, we're looking at virtual, but we'll also talk about in person, because hopefully eventually we are going back to school, and thinking about how we support adult learners in understanding your product and engaging with your content. The big thing about professional development is it can be purchased year round. So we're not waiting for that window of when the school year is starting or when assessment is happening. Training is constantly being purchased. And it's being purchased in 2 key ways. So the first one being is Title II funds. So this is really for K to 12, sometimes can apply to pre-K as well if you're a school district that has early childhood mandated. So if you're a pre-K requirement within a K-12 school district, so for example, in Texas or in Illinois, it could also count towards pre-K in regards to professional development funding. Also, any of these CARES Act and ESSER II funding that's talking about making up for learning loss. Well, training teachers on how to use your tool to create academic outcomes is a great way to utilize those funds. And the reason I really want to push you guys to look at professional development, even though it's a little bit different than your product, is because professional development can be a bit of a loophole. You don't want to build a product on a loophole, but it's okay to exploit in the beginning. And the reason is because training can be the pathway. It's much easier to get into a school district for training and establish your expertise. So a great example is we have a client that helps with student grading. We created a professional development around rubrics and best practices for rubric grading in a classroom environment. Then we use their product, right, which is the grading rubric platform, as a tool for the professional development. You raise the cost of the PD, you lower the cost of the tool or license, bundle them together, and that is how you're able to make Title II really help your startup infiltrate into the education system. And so today I really want to talk about kind of 3 main things to think about when you're looking at professional development and how to utilize this practice to work for you. So first one is best practices for implementation. What are the things you should be thinking about when it comes to professional development and training? Second, what do you include in your contract to make sure you are set up for success? So many pitfalls here, and we really want to talk about what those can be. And third, how to structure a PD session. What do you include? How long does it need to be? What do those things need to look like so you're prepared to have that conversation? So the first thing I want you to keep in mind, energy is everything. People will feed off you and you set the tone. If you're excited about your product, they'll be excited as well. The second thing to think about is humor. It helps. We're all human, acted. I'm gonna probably step over my words numerous times during this 10-minute video. Things happen, we're all human. Make it part of the engagement. Third thing is culture is key. Learn about your environment and their engagement. The more you can kind of associate yourself to the community that you're talking to, the better chance you'll have of that engagement and their excitement about your work. And last, I'm going to tell you that everyone is special. As a first grade teacher, we always joke, each student is like a snowflake, right? Everyone's unique. Same thing with adult learners in your professional development session. There's gonna be somebody in there who's gonna tell you that you don't understand their classroom environment or their teaching style. Again, treat it with humor, try to relate to the culture that's going on, realize you're not gonna please everyone, right? And everyone has a unique thing that they can add. Maybe they can give an example of their classroom or a problem that they're trying to solve, right? Let them encourage to be an active participant in the training. So talking about professional development and best practices. So as I mentioned, we kind of have two types of implementation. We have in-person and virtual. So first we'll talk about in-person and kind of setting the stage of what are those key things that are best practice for an adult learner in an education environment. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how many people can you fit in a room? Personally, we say 35 is the maximum per one speaker for a professional development. If you're doing a district level or a keynote, you could have more people together in the beginning. But when you break out, you really want to have a maximum of 35 people in the room so you're able to engage and ask questions and then get your learners involved. For a half-day PD, we consider that 4 hours or less, and you definitely want to keep in there some breaks and things like that for people to move around and engage with one another. A full day is a 7 to 8 hour training. So when you're pricing those out for school districts, the average cost for a half day is going to be $2,000 and $2,500. A full day can go as low as $1,500 and as high as $3,500. Also different ways to bundle and package, but want to give you a general idea. The key thing about an in-person PD is understanding how you want your participants to engage. Do you want them to be sitting at individual tables? Do you want them in parts of two? Think about the setup of your room and how you want those people to participate. There's plenty of helpful hints online about in-person professional development and how to set up, but definitely think about that and make sure you set that in your contract and set those expectations. Now for virtual, I really want to say 45 minutes is maximum for engaging a virtual learner. We all have Zoom fatigue. No one wants to sit for longer than 45 minutes. If you're like Rayna, I need more than 45, that's okay. Make sure you schedule a break at that time to really keep the learning going. For virtual, I would really say maximum 15 learners. Again, it's hard in a virtual environment to call on people and engage and to keep that kind of conversation going. 15 is really a good maximum for best practice. Again, if it's a webinar style, so maybe you're just presenting, then Q&A at the end, you can probably max it up to 35 or 40. And again, it just depends on the level of engagement you're trying to get from your audience. If you're thinking about virtual, you really also want to think about the platform that you're using. Is the school district already using Google Classroom, so they're used to Google Hangout? Are they using Teams? Are they more of a Zoom school? Whatever the teachers are used to learning on is probably the best platform for you to utilize. Next thing to think about is to always define whether or not the presentation will be recorded. Let them know up front if that's something that's expected. And you want to also create an opportunity for participation in whatever methodology that you choose. The next thing is, what do you include in your contract? So how do you set yourself up for success? The number one thing when you're doing an in-person PD is, do you need internet? I know it sounds silly, but you'll walk into a school after hours, all of a sudden you're in the library, there's no one there, you're supposed to give a training, and no one knows the Wi-Fi password. So setting up, do you need internet? Do you need an extension cord? Do you need speakers? Do you need a projector? Do you need chart paper? What are those key things you need in person? When doing virtual, what's the expectation? The big thing to put in the contract, if your teachers need to come to the training with data, with sample student work, set those expectations up front to make sure that level of engagement is there. Any pre-work, things like that. Also really important, make sure you establish who is taking attendance. Is someone from a school district going to be doing that, or are you responsible to make sure teachers get their credit for the engagement? And lastly, thinking about how do you structure this professional development session. So I kind of want to break it down to in a few different levels of thinking. So the first is the hook and the agenda. So it's your introduction. You establish the outcomes. You let them know, what is the timeline? I told you this webinar will be about 10 minutes long. Setting those expectations up front prepares your learner for success. Second, establish norms. What are the protocols? What are questions and feedback? Are those expected? Do you want people to participate in the chat? Would you like them to wait till the first 10 minutes to submit questions? Setting up those expectations for success. Think about just like a classroom. Next, dive in and model. So you want to give an example and then follow that up with an actual experience. Let the teachers utilize the platform, get their hands dirty, and try the implementation for themselves. Lastly, bring it home with a reflection or an exit ticket. My favorite one is a 3-2-1. What are 3 things you found out, 2 things you learned, and 1 question you still had? ABC icebreakers are really good. Give people a letter, have them associate a word with the experience. Providing them that opportunity to have a strong professional development makes a connection to you and your company for further feedback and reference. It's really helpful in helping you guys engage and get into the marketplace.